Your mom.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We are talking about collecting nendoroids, general tips and information about them, and what to expect when you're trying to get into them. I've been keeping nendoroids for a very long time, though my collection has dwindled over the years. Though I don't have very many now, I can confidently say I'm quite experienced in collecting these, so if you are interested in getting into them yourself and wanted to know what they were all about, here are my tips and general information about nendoroids. Shout out to JinGraves for requesting this video. I'll put the link to his channel in the description box. Since nendoroids have been around a long time, I've chosen a few nendoroids to help illustrate the changes over time and the various versions that you can find available. From my personal collection, I have Vocaloid Kaito number 58, Nizuma Eiji from Bakuman 213, Link from Breath of the Wild 733DX, and Susie Manbavaran from Little Witch Academia 835. I'll try to point out some of the key changes that were made throughout the history of nendoroids, as well as some of the quality and design changes, if any. Starting off with Vocaloid Kaito number 58. As you can guess by the low number, he's one of the earlier releases in the Nendoroid line. So the general box design would be the centered character with this closed window. There's some windows on the sides, and the numbering are in particular places. Nendoroids typically come with a few faceplates, character-specific items. In this case, it's Kaito's scarf and his little popsicle ice cream, a few posing options, and the display base. The older Nendoroid releases had really character-specific bases, so it was impossible to share between them. As you can see by the Kaito base, it's sculpted so that it fits right under his coat and between his legs. The PVC used is relatively soft, so over time it does tend to get a little bit sticky depending on how it's kept. In comparison, all of the newer nendoroids are a lot firmer, so they don't have that flimsy feel. In the past, broken neck joints was a common problem, but since the switch of materials, I think, it has come up less and less. Most of the nendoroids function very similar, with the exception of some movable ones, which I will talk about later. To change faceplates on an nendoroid is super simple. All you have to do is pull off the front half of the head and pop a new faceplate in and just slot the front half back on. Because the heads are very large, I think this is the main appeal of nendoroids, just to swap out faces, but they are top heavy and they cannot stand on their own, so you need those bases or they will topple right over. Another thing to note at this stage is that each nendoroid's head is sculpted, though they look similar, different, and at different scales, so not all of the faceplates are interchangeable between the characters. Moving on to Nizuma Eiji, we talk about another stage in, the history of Nendoroid. So, as you can tell, the base is very different. Now, this base was first introduced in an Nendoroid character, Saber Super Movable Edition. I think that's what it was called. The number was 121, and that is when they first introduced articulated nendoroids. They were quite fun, actually. They don't do too much of that, but when you do see one, it's pretty cool. Nizuma here is not one of those articulated nendoroids, but he does have a cool bottom part. So sometimes they would trade out certain character items or faceplates and compromise with other parts. In this case, we only have one item that is personal to Nizuma, but we get a lot of cool arms and a completely separate bottom section for his particular pose. The amount of accessories you get per character really depends on the design of the character, and there's no guarantee. You can find some really bare bone ones where they only have one or two things, and then you have something like Nizuma where the whole blister is just completely packed. This is Nizuma AG's box. As you can see, the numbering is in a similar place, but obviously they changed up the design and the colors of the actual print to suit the character. Not much difference here, just a few minor changes, character specific and all that other stuff. This is Breath of the Wild DX version Link. Basically, it's the extended version of a standard release where you can get Link by himself without Epona and some of the other awesome accessories. By this point, the box design has changed, so you can see that there's a massive circle showing the figure on the front, and some of the sides are different. And this box, the DX box, is wider than the standard, obviously because it has more stuff in it. This stage of box design is my personal favorite. They have a lot of consistencies and they look great on my shelf together. So basically, all they did was change the color of the font, the background of the circles, and the sides of the box to represent the characters, but the faces, the top and front faces of the boxes stay white so that they look awesome on the shelves. Of course, there are exceptions to this. Venom Snake comes to mind from Metal Gear series. His box where the white bits are red, so he really sticks out on the shelf, which is annoying. Just quickly touching on the Link figure, nothing much to show. Same base from the movable, which they decided to standardize at this point, which is really awesome. The DX version obviously comes with a lot more stuff. So you have an extra head, completely different headpiece. You have Epona, which is a amazing accessory by itself. It's posable, which is nice. Usually, extended versions or DX versions are only maybe 1,000 yen, 1,500 yen extra, and I always think it's worth it to get the extended version. You definitely get more out of your Nendoroid this way. And the last Nendoroid I want to talk about is Susie Man Bavarian. She is my most recent Nendoroid at 835, and she comes in a new box design. I quite like it. It's gonna take me a while to adjust all my Nendoroids to suit this style, but overall, I do think it's a good direction. It's more compact, as you can see. I'll show you a side-by-side comparison. But here is the box. It's thicker, and it's just nice. Immediately, you can tell that the box design is very different just by looking at the blister. So there's a lot less of wasted space, and the whole thing is just far more compact. On the back, there is a back layer for her hat and other bigger accessories. The front has the main figure, faceplates, and all the other stuff. One of the things that I wanted to point out in Susie's figure is that she has other character specific items. This is going to lead into my other point later on, but it's so that you want to collect all the series. So the little sprout here, it's for the main character of Little Witch Academia, and if you don't have her, here's an accessory to incentivize you buying that figure. We have the return of the square base, which is, you can tell I really love that base. It provides good support, it's simple, and it just works, so why not? Also, in this version, the head piece do not include neck joints. Now, I don't know exactly when they started doing this, but it's a great idea because faceplates are the part that people play with the most. But as you can tell from the base, there is one provided in case you break it. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the different sizes of box, featuring Conan, which also has a different Nendo box design. As you can see, it's a wider window with no sides. You can see how much more compact the Susie Man Bavarian figure is now that you see it next to the others. Here are them stacked together. Obviously, the DX version is much wider, but the height is the same for the regular. Susie is just shorter, both in height and width, but is a bit bigger in terms of depth. Now, the main thing I wanted to say about Nendoroids is that they're an expensive hobby. Sure, individually, they don't cost nearly as much as a full scale, but as a good friend puts it, they call their friends. It's nearly impossible to collect Nendoroids without collecting the full series, or at least 2 or 3 of that same series. If you give it a couple of months, you'll easily become overwhelmed because Good Smile pumps out Nendoroids like a money-draining machine. On top of that, you have event exclusives, alternate versions, and so forth. It's gonna be a hard time. My word of advice when collecting Nendoroids is to be selective. They are beautiful and high quality figures, but they're not exactly cheap. If you're a collector who's into the chibi aesthetic and want to get something like Funko Pop or Nendoroids, then I'd definitely recommend the Nendoroid over the Funko Pop just because of the quality difference. If you're someone who wants to get into figure collecting in general and want a cheaper start, I don't really recommend Nendoroids because eventually they're going to be equal or more expensive than the full-scale hobby. If you're just trying to get into figures, just save up for that one cool figure that you want, and then see if you can constantly afford that price, because Nendoroids come out so often you'll want to do that. And that concludes my general information and tips on Nendoroids and collecting Nendoroids. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Thank you to JinGraves again for the suggestion of the video, and I hope you found it helpful as well, or at least entertaining. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye!